Yeah. Just give like a few things. There's a lot to think about here, right? I think I can like segment it into like educators and university leaders and how that might vary. For educators, I think that a lot of some stuff that we're looking for as students is less time learning about the content and learning from a slideshow that we can easily replicate, and in fact probably learn better in a more personalized learning style from a chatbot, and more time in those in-class application exercises, debating with teachers and debating with students in a Socratic style. I think number two is building failure into design in terms of the education practices, and what that looks like is specific activities, exams, and measures of academic performance that might actually, challenge students to fail and evaluating the muscle that builds, because there is a lot of value in like human connection and human relationships where failing does help you grow, and in a world where things are becoming a lot easier, and AI is becoming a lot more frictionless, I think that muscle is very important. I think for university leaders, I think the biggest thing is just like the auditing should be never ending. Changing what KPIs look like. Specifically, it should no longer be like, what is the average exam performance? What is the average attendance rate? What is the average student satisfaction? It should look like, at the end of your senior year, how many relationships do you have with professors? How many friendships have you made that have gone beyond XYZ? What is your attendance rate in class? How many activities and organizations are you part of on campus? What like social organizations are, like things like that. Changing the indicators of student involvement on campus might tell us a little bit more and give us a little bit more depth and color to how students are engaging in educational like experiences. And I think that like there should just be like a lot more opportunity, I think, for university leaders here that are specifically centered around just bringing people together, like communal events. I think if I'm looking back at my first 2 years in college, it's like the random there was like a Hassan Minaj show like this weekend that we went to, or like the random like petting zoo that happens, or like there's just like so many events like that on campus. I think like those are the events that really remind us what's so special to be human, and what's so special to be in community with folks around us, and designing more of those spaces will just compound over time.
Thank you, Cash. What do you think, Marisol? What piece of advice would you give?
I've thought about this, but I talked to someone and it was just so tangible. I was like, can I quote you? Harriet is the president of Harvey Mudd College. If you don't know what Harvey Mudd is, it's a very small, 900 students engineering school in Pomona. And she told me something and so my advice is, and I'll give an example, don't be afraid to strip and rebuild the foundation. And I say this because she told me that at Harvey Mudd, they want to have a conversation so badly, they completely wiped out their new orientation week and are having a conversation with students. They're rewriting their honor code, their kind of statements that go out in the beginning of the year, in hopes of just bringing that conversation and making it so tangible that they can make new moves. You don't want to make assumptions of your students, but so many schools might get that advice. Kosh let me know that it's very oversaturated. You constantly hear, don't make assumptions of your students, but how can you actually, start hearing them out? He just mentioned, start creating those spaces where they feel comfortable talking to you about it. Because one thing I realized as having been an educator, trust between teachers and students is deteriorating at a faster rate. And then you think about, how many students actually know their counselors, their presidents. Open up the conversation, make spaces for them to actually have a say, and don't be afraid of the foundations. This technology is moving so fast in big tech that a lot like social media, move fast and break things, and schools aren't keeping up. So I think that they shouldn't always try to play it safe. You're not always going to have the right answers, so don't be afraid to have to rewrite and continue auditing. You might have to rewrite that honor code 1 year after you already did it. It's time consuming, but I think it's well worth it to have your students have a say in all of that.
Amazing. Take us out, Hannah. What's your piece of advice for the people in this room?
All right, so my pieces of advice surround the things that I've learned by being a part of the Rhythm Project, by going to their summits and being held and cared for in ways that I think only the Rhythm Project has done in my past. The first thing is that we're in a world where everything feels completely out of control. I have no idea what's happening with my career. I'm going into my first job after college. I do not know if that's the right move, or even if that job will exist 3 years from now. And so what are some ways that you can help young people feel in control and start to reason about AI in the policies that you're making for school? Because I honestly have no faith. Maybe I'm a bit of a pessimist in this way, but I'm an optimist in every other area of my life. I have no faith that there's one policy that you're going to be able to implement in every single classroom that's going to solve the problem of how young people are using AI for their education and for human connection. What are some ways that you can kind of co-create that with young people in a way that helps them understand through games like this, what are my own boundaries around AI? What are the things that I really value in my life and want to pull forward into my future as I become more and more the human that I want to be? And I think using those kind of policy making processes as an opportunity for young people to understand what it is they care about and how they want to show up in the world is a really unique opportunity. If you can help young people feel really heard and seen in those processes and feel more in control of an understanding of how they want to use AI, I think that's a really empowering process. And you can do that through policy making. You don't have to have it as a separate thing that they go to outside of school. The other thing that I would say is that not all of us have had really amazing experiences of human connection. And so how can you as universities support our ability to know what it feels like to be seen and heard and like full of connection and understand connection as an intelligence itself? So before I joined the Rhythm Project and went to my first summit, I had never walked into a room where anything that could be said in the room could actually happen and where I felt so seen and heard and valued and like I belonged. I didn't know what that felt like, and so I wasn't striving for it because I didn't know it was a possibility. The other thing that Rhythm taught me is that human connection is an intelligence. I had never really had the permission before to set aside my work in school to take an opportunity to connect with my friends. And since I went to my first summit, I've been doing that. Because if human connection is an intelligence in and of itself, it's worth setting aside times for the more traditional intelligence that honestly AI is doing better at to help build that kind of old, traditional type of wisdom that you can only get by connecting with other people. So my 3 takeaways are, 1, how can you use the process of policy making to help empower students to step into their own agency around AI? 2, how can you show students what it is to feel fully connected? How can you support students in the ways that they're already bringing that about to Canvas? And 3, how can you give students permission to understand and teach them that human connection is an intelligence in and of itself and is something worth pouring into just as much as their academics, their future career, and everything else that they're striving for. Because let them strive if they're going to strive, but let them strive towards human connection, I guess.